Dwyane Wade's 2006 finals was one of the most polarizing performances in NBA history. A third-year, 24-year-old player averaging 35 points to bring his team to the first championship in franchise history. Yet, depending on who you ask, they might suggest that there was something else going on. Former referee Tim Donaghy claims that the Mavericks were screwed out of a championship, and because Wade ended the series averaging more than 16 free throws a game, that's led to some speculation. So, was this a case of Miami just simply getting a lucky draw, or was it actually one of the greatest individual performances we've ever seen? To start the series, Miami was looking to run as much offense through Shaq in the post as possible, and because he's so physically overwhelming, even in his old age, Dallas was forced to double team him off the catch. And the thing about Shaq is that he was always willing to make the right decision, so when the double comes, he's hunting for either shooters or cutters to dime up. Because he knows that a second body's coming, he just patiently waits instead of forcing the issue, so that he can create an advantage for his team to attack, and the result is a wide open Jason Williams 3. Here it is again, except this time it's a pass to Wade at the top of the key. Wade, however, isn't much of a three-point shooter at all, so instead of pulling the jumper, what he's gonna do is look to slash, blowing right by Dirk in space for 2 at the cup. Through these quick attacks, he's able to play off of Shaq and help tilt the defense without actually adding the three-point threat. When the ball gets to him, Terry knows he'll exploit that space, so he attempts to recover, but it's too late because Wade's already stepping into an automatic elbow jumper. So you've got the slashing, the one dribble pull-up game, and he could also connect the offense by making sharp extra passes. Terry rotates over to take away that space and prevent an attack, which leaves Williams all alone on the weak side wing as he steps into a 3 that just rims out. Because Wade's such a lethal attacker off the catch and on the move, a big staple in Miami's offense was starting him under the basket or on the baseline and using down screens to bring him to the ball, this time using his momentum to hunt out open space near the left elbow for a drifting midi. His ability to start and stop or quickly change directions made him so effective flying off screens like this, rejecting the pick and roll and exploding baseline where help is just a touch late sliding over to meet him. And whenever Dallas threw extra defenders into these actions or lost cutters, he'd punish them with that passing. His momentum carries him into a drive that gets cut off, so he counterspins into a mid-range jumper. But while at the peak of his release, he recognizes that Dirk is watching the ball and not his man, instead sneaking a beautiful assist right by his ear for a layup. While Wade did generate a lot of offense in these set off-ball actions, or by playing off of Shaq in the post, of course he still initiated from the perimeter, and it's there where his athletic tools jump off the screen. I'd say only 1 or 2 players in NBA history come close to rivaling the explosiveness of his first step, and he'd weaponize that through constant size-ups and hesitations because he could drive right or left with the same speed. And once he took that first step, it was already over for the defense. He starts this one out at half court, Miami clearing the floor so that he's one-on-one in space. He fakes the first step and actually loses his balance, his back knee and offhand both touching the court. So like any normal athlete, he just explodes from that awkward position and to his top speed, getting right by his defender and attempting to put a second one on the highlight reel. Not only was Wade faster and more agile than anyone on the court, he was also a bulky, strong 6'4". So if a defender is able to slide in front of that initial burst, he'll just drop the shoulder and create separation through contact. Notice how low to the floor he gets when taking off, and because of his body positioning, it's his off shoulder that leads the way, going right through Devin Harris before finishing over the top of rim protection down low. To prevent him from touching the paint, it took one of 2 things, either bringing multiple defenders into almost a wall-like formation, or the point of attack guy sagging off and overplaying the drive, and that's when you'd see him pull back into the mid-range game. It's the exact same thing when working off of screens in the pick and roll. Josh Howard goes under so that he can take an angle that beats Wade to the paint, but in that he gives up room for him to step into a pull-up jumper. So what Dallas primarily did to defend these actions was have the point of attack guy chase him over with a big and drop, but what that did is again give him space to exploit as a slasher. He made a living in game 1 just relentlessly hunting for Dirk in these actions, turning the corner and going right at the big man for 2 points at the cup. And because Dirk's not very mobile laterally, he either had to commit to the ball or stay attached to his man, which consistently freed up the pick and pop. That last one was to Haslam for a free throw line jumper, but Antoine Walker could space all the way to the 3-point line, and that's just high quality offense. So going under opened him up to pull-up jumpers, playing in a drop opened up driving lanes or playmaking opportunities, and when the big came up a touch higher in a more aggressive coverage, he just split the difference before launching into a vicious poster. That speed made him lethal in the open floor, where he was always a threat to get out and beat the defense, but he could also be a bit more methodical when attacking in transition, using his handle and patiently reading the defense as he pulls multiple defenders into the paint before making a pretty high level pass to James Posey on a cut. This time it's after a defensive rebound where he looks to initiate the break, and after 2 dribbles he recognizes that Jason Williams is going to beat Dallas down the floor, so he quickly kicks it ahead, hitting him in stride on his way to 2 free points. There were so many things to like in Wade's performance over the first 2 games, but also some question marks that loomed over not just his individual play, but Miami's offensive execution as a whole. For one, in game 2, Wade was extremely unaggressive, just not looking to get to his own shot at all and moving it around like he was a role player, and at times it almost felt like he was an afterthought, idling away from the ball as the Heat struggled to create anything of substance. I think some of that has to do with external factors, like how Wade was struggling with the flu for over a week at that point, but it also had to do with some of what Dallas was doing defensively. They threw out a zone to shut off the paint, and in that zone they were aggressively fronting Shaq to prevent him from touching the ball. Because that's the basis of what Miami wanted to do on offense, it looked like they had no clue what to do for most of the game. It got out of hand pretty fast. The Mavs ended the first half on an 11-0 run, it turned into a blowout, Wade got into foul trouble, Pat Riley picked up a tech, just an overall frustrating performance. In games 1 and 2 of the series, Wade averaged 25.5 points, 7 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, which at face value seems like some pretty great numbers. But when you take a look deeper, you'll find that he also recorded 4.5 turnovers, shot below 47% true shooting, and Miami had just an abysmal 93.1 offensive rating. Dallas jumped out to a 2-0 series lead behind Wade and the rest of the squad struggles, but now it was time to head back to their home floor, and this is when things took a turn for the better. A big part of Miami's success in Game 3 came as a result of Wade's ability to play off the ball and seamlessly fit with Shaq. When that double comes, he's hanging under the basket, and although he's a guard, because of his vertical pop off of 2 feet, he can serve as a play finisher like this. Here's another example. Jason Williams draws 2 defenders on closeouts with Wade operating on the baseline, and off the catch he takes a power dribble to get in close for a reverse dunk. Almost like what you see from Aaron Gordon playing off of Jokic in Denver's offense. Whenever Dallas tilted their defense towards Shaq, we again saw Wade punishing them with quick decisions off the catch. Notice how he actually starts moving into his attack before ever touching the ball, which gives him a little more momentum as he drives right by Dirk for 2. On this one, it's one of those baseline actions bringing him towards the middle of the floor, and Dirk is forced to rotate to close off the paint, which leaves Haslam for a brief moment under the basket, resulting in a layup. I also think Wade had some really nice moments in transition, turning on the Jets after a defensive rebound, directing traffic to clear out space, and charging right down the heart of the defense to take it coast to coast. When he initiated in the half court, it was a lot of pick and roll, But what I think stands out is that instead of turning the corner and looking to beat the defense with sheer speed, he was a bit more patient coming off the screen and reading different situations, hesitating as if looking to change directions, which freezes his defender and gives him a lane all the way to the cup. This time Dallas is going to look to switch the action, but Jerry Stackhouse doesn't come up high enough to prevent Wade from taking that first step, and he exploits the space with a beautiful counterspin down the middle of the paint for 2 points plus the foul. And just like we saw in games 1 and 2, if opposing defenders started to overplay the drive or wall off the paint, he had no problem just stepping into mid-range jumpers. Even with Wade looking a lot better, the Heat still found themselves down 13 points with just 6 minutes to go. Remember, they're down 2-0, so if they were to lose this game, it'd take an absolute miracle to even make the series competitive. And in the face of disaster, that's when we saw who Dwyane Wade truly was, completely taking over the game in a manner that very few can say they've done in a wide variety of ways. It started with some pick and roll, using an up fake to lose his man before driving around the screen, and when Dirk shuts off the middle, he counters by sidestepping back towards the baseline for a soft touch jumper off the glass. Next time down, it was an isolation from the corner, jabbing right before exploding baseline, and because Eric Dampier doesn't want to leave Shaq alone under the basket, there's nobody in position to meet him. About a minute later, it was another pick and roll, and when Devin Harris goes under the screen to protect the paint, he uses that space to step into one of his patented elbow jumpers. This one started with him away from the ball, running off a couple screens as he curls, and he's able to use his defender's momentum against him by quickly changing directions and driving left. Dampier's there, but it doesn't really make much of a difference. Here goes another off-ball screening action that brings him to the ball, this time to set up an open side pick and roll with Shaq. Off the screen, Dampier's in a deep drop, so Wade just sets his feet and fires a real easy mid-range jumper. In Game 3, Dwyane Wade marked 42 points, 15 of which came in the fourth, as Miami just squeezed out a 2-point win on their home floor. This was a must-win game, and not only did they do that, but the manner in which it happened and the comeback really shifted the momentum in their favor. They went on to absolutely dominate Dallas in Game 4, leading by 10 at the half and 24 after 4 quarters of play, as Wade poured in another marquee performance with his 36 points on 67% true shooting. In Game 5, Wade came out a little cold, shooting just 3 of 13 in the first half, and by the time crunch time rolled around, we were again looking at a nail-biter. With just over 2 minutes left, down 4, it was like he flipped a switch. They spaced the floor so that he can isolate, using his speed to blow right by Harris, and countering help down low by floating it up over the top. You can see that every time he looked to go to work one-on-one, Dallas made an effort to pack the paint, which is why having a mid-range game is so imperative here. When he gets to the elbow, he throws a little half spin to create some separation for a fall-away jumper. And it was the exact same thing when coming off of screens. Both Dirk and Dampier aggressively play the nail to take away a drive down the middle, and Wade has no problem just stepping into tough jumpers from the free throw line. On the last play of regulation, they made the mistake of not loading up or bringing an extra body, and with just one defender standing in his way, he uses that shoulder bump to create a finishing angle before showcasing some remarkable body control as he ties the game at 93. To start overtime, the Heat run a little decoy action on the weak side so that Wade can come off a screen into open space going left, and it's just effortless as he sticks a pull-up J off the window. Now with 8 seconds left, down 1, the Mavericks finally made it a point of emphasis to get the ball out of his hands at all costs, making someone else beat them. Except Wade had other plans, keeping his dribble alive as he seemingly drives every way possible, knifing through traffic and into the heart of the defense, where he earns himself a pair of free throws. These were just 2 of his 25 free throws in Game 5, which I know sounds completely outlandish and raises a ton of questions, but in going through each possession, I started to pick up on a few things that were leading to these kinds of numbers. For one, by nature of his style of play, he's pretty much always going to generate free throws. I'm talking about his constant aggression attacking the basket, the lethal first step that pretty much gives him unlimited access to the paint, and how he'll use his shoulders to initiate or force contact. Another thing is that if he feels contact, he'll shoot into it with the intent of getting free throws. When he drops the shoulder and leaves his feet, this ref calls a blocking foul while the ball is still in his hands. It's pretty obvious that he's looking to kick the ball out to the wing initially, but after hearing the whistle he adjusts in midair, instead turning it into a shot. And just like that, you've got 2 free throws. Historically, there have been 2 primary ways of getting a lot of free throws. On one hand, you have the Michael Jordan, David Robinson, Shaquille O'Neals of the world who have unique physical traits and use that to pressure the defense, forcing fouls. On the other hand, you have those who are amazing at taking advantage of the rules, baiting the defense into making mistakes, and almost playing a game within the game with the refs. Names like James Harden, Trae Young, and Damian Lillard stand out in the current NBA. Now, every once in a while, we get a rare breed of player who masters both, and that's exactly what Dwyane Wade was. He'd upfake and jump into defenders at any given chance, he'd lead with his body and hear the whistle before throwing up a circus shot. I mean, this guy had every single trick in the book. You pair that with how close some of these games were and the amount of late game clock fouling that went on, I came away with the feeling that his foul drawing, as annoying as it may be for the opposing team, were pretty much all respectable calls. If you don't want a guy to get to the line, simply don't foul him. Another thing that I think stood out about this series from Wade was how he gradually used the mid-range more and more as it progressed. The Mavs were already so worried about his slashing and foul drawing that he pretty much had a quality long 2 whenever he wanted. Now remember, this is a different era, and while long 2s were never a great shot, when someone like Wade got it going from there, it was just impossible to guard. Especially when that player has so much versatility in how he gets into them and the vast amount of counters he has for creating space. In games 1 and 2, Wade took just 5 long 2s a game and hit 40% of them, but in the next 4, he more than doubled the volume to about 11 a game, knocking down over 58%. Some of that is shooting variance, it's also just catching a rhythm and trusting the shot. With that said though, it's not like he was settling, but rather patiently taking what the defense gave him and making all the right reads. When hesitating, he recognizes that he can get a better shot with Dirk defending, and instead of pulling the jumper, he keeps that dribble live and works his way into a quality floater. And it was the exact same thing when they forced him to be a playmaker for others. Instead of looking to move the ball as quickly as possible, he uses his handle to create a better angle, and the result is 2 easy points. Here's another one, rejecting the pick and roll with that explosive first step, collapsing the paint, and leaving his feet as if looking to finish vertically, only to drop it off to Shaq for some automatic offense at the rim. When comparing his performance from the first 2 to the last 4, it's almost like looking at a completely different player. His basic box score jumped to 39, 8, and 3.5, his turnovers dropped, and his efficiency was in entirely different territory. Of course, this had a direct impact on Miami's team offense, scoring about 105 points every 100 possessions, a drastic change. There are a ton of different things you can point to for this change, starting with the fact that he just simply recovered from the flu. But also I think there was a noticeable difference in how he used pace to patiently read the defense, and in spots where he was forcing offense, instead just took what they gave him, whether it was a long 2, a floater over the top, a pass to an open teammate, adapting to the defense and improving his decision making. That's one of the staples in what makes great players so great, and at just age 24, Wade was exactly that, taking the Heat to the promised land in one of the most impressive individual finals performances the game has ever seen. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you thought of the series. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.